Hello everyone and welcome to EduTap. In this video, we are going to discuss 10 important MCQs from the subject of freedom movement and Indian Union. And as we know that this subject is a very important part of the syllabus of the ESIC Deputy Director exam. So do not miss out on these sessions. I have already taken 12 such sessions. As you know, this video is part of a series of sessions that I have already taken, and 12 such sessions I have already discussed with you, or in all these sessions I have discussed more than 10 multiple choice questions with you, and in all we have till now discussed more than 100 such questions, and out of these set of 100 questions we can expect questions in the ESIC Deputy Director exam itself. So if you have not watched those sessions, I would recommend that click on the link that is given above. You will reach the playlist in which all these sessions they are included, and all these important MCQs. Please go through all these videos so that your revision for the subject of freedom movement in Indian Union is now complete. Okay, so before proceeding ahead with the session, I would again recommend and request you to please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you have not done this till now, and also join our Telegram channel, because all the sessions that we take on our YouTube, the free PDFs absolutely free of cost, and all other content, notes, etc. is available for download on this Telegram channel. Link of this channel is given in the description box below. Okay, so now let us talk about the questions that we are going to discuss. 10 questions I will present in front of the screen, and then I would also request you to go through all these sessions questions, and if you want you can pause the video and you can read those questions very carefully, and then you must answer those questions, right? And then you will get to know if your preparation or revision for the subject is complete for ESIC exam or not. Okay, first question is in front of you. At the beginning of the 20th century, who among the following published the Economic History of India? Now this is a very important work of literature, and it has been written by a very prominent personality. Who among the following four options is responsible for authoring this particular work? Dadabhai Naoroji, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Mahadev Govind Ranade, MG Ranade, or Romesh Chandra Dutt, RC Dutt? Now be very careful. In all the studies that we do about the British rule in India, we know that there was a very intellectual critique of British policies which they adopted for the Indian subcontinent, and in these intellectual critiques there was a very important dimension, that was the economic policies of the British, and how British used their economic policies to drain or extract wealth out from the subcontinent and enrich their own homeland, right? So two prominent personalities are responsible for doing this. One of them is Dadabhai Naoroji, and other one is Romesh Chandra Dutt. Both of them, they have written some very important books. One of this book is the Economic History of India, and it has been written by Romesh Chandra Dutt. Okay, so Romesh Chandra Dutt has written this particular work. Dadabhai Naoroji is also widely popular for authoring one such book. What is the name of that book? What is the name of that book? In this book also he actually criticizes the British economic policies. He exposes how the British, they are using their taxation policies, their tariff policies, their industrialization policies in order to drain wealth out of India, in order to deindustrialize India. Okay, so I would request, if you know the name of the book that has been written by Dadabhai Naoroji in this particular case, in the comment section below please mention the name, so that I get to know that you have been studying very well, you have been revising very well for the exam. If you do not know, if you still don't know the answer for this question, go on internet, find out the answer, and then let the other students and me know in the comment box. Okay, so again I would request you, write the answer of the book that has been written by Dadabhai Naoroji, in which he criticizes the economic policies of the British for the Indian subcontinent. What is the name of that book? Please write it in the comment box below. Okay, so Romesh Chandra Dutt, he's a retired ICS officer, Indian civil service, and he published the Economic History of India at the beginning of the 20th century, in which he examined in minute detail the entire economic record of the colonial rule since 1757, since Battle of Plassey, how the Britishers they have been systematically troubling the Indian economy and impoverishing the Indian masses, is very minutely explained in this particular book. Okay, next up let us talk about the question number 2. Question number 2 is about again a piece of literature, that is Ganadevta. Ganadevta portrays the decline of which one of the following systems? So Ganadevta is a very popular Bengali novel. I would not say that it is quite in the mainstream, because it's a very old novel and it is set in such a times which is not very familiar with the people who are living in India today. But it is a very important literature, it is a very important piece of work through which we get to know the history of the rural India during the British times. So this novel Ganadevta, it portrays the decline of a particular system in Indian rural villages. Options are Zamindari system, Rayotwari system, Jajmani system, or Mehalwari system. So out of these four systems, we know that Zamindari, Rayotwari and Mahalwari systems, these were the revenue systems. Okay, Britishers implemented these systems in different parts of the country in order to extract revenue from the Indian masses. But this Ganadevta, it is talking about a very old and traditional system of economic linkages in Indian villages, and this system was in decline when Britishers came into India. Which system are we talking about here? The system here is correct answer is the Jajmani system, right? What is Jajmani system? If you do not know, I would explain it very briefly. The Ganadevta, it is a Bengali novel. It has been written by Tarashankar Bandyopadhyay. First of all, you must know this, okay? And in this novel, for this novel, he was also awarded the Gyanpith Award in 1966 after independence, okay? And in this novel, Bandyopadhyay narrated the lives of Indian or Bengali villages and lives of villages affected by poverty, ignorance, and primitive instinct. And the system he is talking about here is the Jajmani system. What is Jajmani system? In Indian rural villages, in older times, in some villages, even in present times, we see this kind of system is still in place. The different communities in a village, they are dependent on each other, okay? So the people or the communities who are engaged in manual works, for example, there are some artisans, there is a barber, there is a washerman, and there are different communities which are delegated some tasks which so-called upper caste Hindus do not practice. They do not practice cleaning, they do not practice slaughterhouses, they do not work in slaughterhouses, they do not engage in cutting each other's hair and all that. So some works, they were delegated to particular communities. There was a community of barbers, there was a community of washermen, there was a community of people who were cobblers, for example, and there was a Jajmani system. All these communities, they did these kinds of works and they provided their services to the so-called upper caste people, and the upper caste people in return gave grains, not money. Money was not much in prevalence then. They gave grains because upper caste people, they owned much of the land, they owned much of the produce which came out of those lands, those farms, and therefore out of that produce, out of that grain, they used to give some amount of grain to the other communities, and the other communities in return provided them with the service, okay? So this was the Jajmani system, and it was in decline when Britishers came, because Britishers, they now wanted the revenue, and they popularized the money, they popularized the currency, and now the currency, it was the main mode of transaction, main mode of economic transactions. That is why Jajmani system, it was declining, okay? Because of this decline in Jajmani system, we can say there were some positives, there were some negatives. The caste hierarchy, the caste divisions in the Indian rural society, it got diluted to a much larger extent because of the decline of Jajmani system. But also because this system was in decline, and because the economic linkages in the villages, they were being disturbed, the different communities, they also came in conflict with each other because of this kind of systems, okay? So this is the question number 2. Then we talk about the question number 3. Question number 3 is giving us 4 statements related to the Constituent Assembly of India. Now let us read those statements very carefully, and we have to answer the correct statements out of these 4. So the statement number 1, option number 1 says the Constituent Assembly, the Constitution Assembly of India, was elected by the provincial assemblies in the year 1946. Option B says Jawaharlal Nehru, Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel were members of the Constituent Assembly of India. Third option says the first session of the Constituent Assembly of India was held in January 1947, and last option says the Constitution of India was adopted on 26th of January 1950. So one by one, let us look at these options and find out why these statements are incorrect. Only one statement is correct out of these 4. So let us start from option number D. The Constitution of India was adopted on 26th of January 1950. This statement is wrong. The Constitution of India was enacted on 26th of January. Okay, it was adopted on 26th of November, which is celebrated as the Constitution Day in India. 26th of November of 1949. Okay, so I know that many of us, we were confused in this statement. We thought that this is correct, but be very careful. The Constitution was adopted by the Constituent Assembly on 26th of November 49, but it was enacted, it came into force on 26th of January 1950. Okay, the first session of the Constituent Assembly, it was not held in January 1947, it was held in December 1946. Okay, so the first session, it was held in December 1946. Option B, why is it wrong? Jawaharlal Nehru and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, they were members of the Constituent Assembly, but Muhammad Ali Jinnah was not a member of the Constituent Assembly. He did not participate in any of the sessions of the Constituent Assembly. Be very careful. Neither Mahatma Gandhi nor Muhammad Ali Jinnah were part of the Constituent Assembly of India. Okay. Option A is the correct statement, entirely correct statement. The Constituent Assembly and its members, they were elected by the provincial assemblies. Okay, so in different provinces, the legislatures which were there, which were elected by the people, the representatives, the members of those legislatures, they elected the people of the Constituent Assembly. Okay, so the correct answer for this question is option number A. So again, the Constituent Assembly of India was elected by the provincial assemblies in the year 1946. There were a total of 389 members in the assembly, and India has the largest written constitution. It took 2 years, 11 months and 17 days to write this constitution. 26th November of 49, we adopted it and enacted it on 26th of January 1950, and 1946 was the year when the members of the assembly, they were elected by the provincial assemblies. Done. Let us jump on to the question number 4. Question number 4 is again about Government of India Act 1935, a very important act. You can expect that if there is a question coming out of any of the regulating acts or charter acts of the Government of India acts passed by the Britishers, this is the act that you can expect to see in your exam. The Government of India Act 1935 provided for what? Option 1, statement 1, abolition of diarchy in the governors' provinces. Statement number 2, power of the governors to veto legislative action and to legislate on their own. And statement 3, the abolition of the principle of communal representation. So there are 3 important provisions of the 35 Act. First one says the diarchy was abolished in the governors' provinces. What was diarchy? Diarchy basically means double rule. Okay, so in the governors' provinces, they were given the full autonomy. They were given full autonomy, and the governor, he was responsible to the legislature. So there was no double rule. In diarchy, certain subjects, they were reserved for the governor, and certain subjects, they were open to the legislature. So in all the subjects, out of all the subjects, some subjects, they were exclusively meant for the governor. This was diarchy. But in 835 Act, a provision was made that diarchy will be abolished. The legislature will be empowered to legislate on all the subjects. No subjects were reserved for the governor. Okay, but there was another provision. Power of the governors was there to veto legislative action. If there was some law or some resolution being passed by the legislature which the governor did not like, he could veto that. He could stop that from happening, and he could then legislate on his own. If he vetoes some decisions or some laws, he can legislate on his own. He can come up a law by himself. Okay, so all first and second, both these statements, they are absolutely correct. Diarchy was abolished. All the subjects, they were open to the legislature, but the governor was given power to veto any kind of legislation he did not deem fit. Third statement here says the communal representation was abolished. This is not correct. Communal representation was actually expanded. Before 35 Act, the communal representation or reservations, we can say, in the legislatures, it was open only to the depressed classes. Okay, and to the Muslims. But now it was expanded. It was expanded. How? Women, they were given certain reservations. Depressed classes and labor leaders or representatives of the labor unions, labor organizations, they were also given representation or reservation in the legislatures. Okay, so communal representation, it was not abolished, it was expanded. It was introduced for the first time in 1909 Act, then in 1919 it was expanded a bit more, and 1935 it was expanded to include women, depressed classes, as well as the labor unions, right? So this is your question number 4. Next comes your question number 5. Question number 5 is about the Native Marriage Act of 1872. It was a very important legislation passed by the Britishers. Who among the following played a very important role for passing the Native Marriage Act of 1872? This Native Marriage Act is nowadays also known as the Indian Christian Marriage Act. Okay, this act basically delineates the procedure that has to be followed by people who profess Christianity but they belong to Indian subcontinent. Okay, so options are Devendranath Tagore, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Keshav Chandra Sen, and Shyam Chandra Das. These are the 4 options. And Native Marriage Act, it was passed on the behest of Keshav Chandra Sen, KC Sen. Right, he was the person, he was a very influential Bengali intellectual, or we can say leader. He was also involved with Brahmo Samaj earlier, and then he broke away from Brahmo Samaj. He adopted Christianity, and then he started professing his own new kind of dispensation. And he was also, widely known for reforms and for empowering women and for empowering other depressed sections of the society, although there might be some controversy related to his own decisions about his personal life. But he was a very intellectual and influential, Bengali leader, and he also worked for the passing of Native Marriage Act, which gave Indian Christians who were native Indians but they profess Christianity, and they were given their own procedure to marry, so that they can register their marriages officially. Before that, they had to marry according to the laws which were passed for English people in Britain, right? So this Native Marriage Act, it was specifically meant for the Christians who were of Indian origin. Next up is your question number 6. Now question number 6 is about the sessions of Indian National Congress. Statement 1 says the first session of Indian National Congress was held in Calcutta. The first session of Indian National Congress was held in Calcutta. The venue of first session was Calcutta, it is said in the first statement. Second one says the second session of the Indian National Congress was held under the presidentship of Dadabhai Naoroji. So the second session, who was the president, it is being asked. In the first session, what was the venue, it is being asked. Third statement says both Indian National Congress and Muslim League held their sessions at Lucknow in 1916 and concluded the Lucknow Pact. So now you have to identify the correct statements out of these three. In the first statement, the venue is being tested. In the second statement, the president of the session, the second session, he is being tested. And in the third session, what happened before the Lucknow Pact in 1916, it is being tested. If we talk about the correct answer, yes, the first session of the Indian National Congress, was it held in Calcutta? No, it was not held in Calcutta. Okay, the second session of the Indian National Congress, it was held under the presidentship of Dadabhai Naoroji. Yes, this is correct. Dadabhai Naoroji was the president of the Indian National Congress in the second session, which happened in what year, that I want to know the answer of. The third statement, the both Indian National Congress and Muslim League, they held their sessions in 1916 at Lucknow to conclude the Lucknow Pact. Yes, this is correct. This was a joint session. And in this session, the congressmen, they were led by Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and the Muslim League, it was coming up with its own demand that we want Muslims to be integrated and to be represented in the Indian National Congress. And a Lucknow Pact was reached, in which Congress agreed to give representations in the assemblies to Muslims or to minorities, right? So the third statement is absolutely correct. Second statement is absolutely correct. Dadabhai Naoroji was the president of the second session of the Indian National Congress. And statement 1 here is wrong, that the first session of Indian National Congress was held in Calcutta. So the correct answer here is option C, 2 and 3 only. But what I want is answers from you. I want to know that the first session of Indian National Congress, it was not held in Calcutta, it was held in Bombay. But who was the president of the first session of the Indian National Congress? Who was the president of first session? This I want to know from you in the comment box. I have already given you a question, that which was the book, what was the name of the book that was written by Dadabhai Naoroji, critiquing the economic policies of British towards India. Now the second question from my side is that who was the president, who was the leader, who was the chairman of the first session of the Indian National Congress, which was held in Bombay in 1885. The third question, if you want to answer, please tell me that the second session of Indian National Congress, which was led by Dadabhai Naoroji, where was it held? What was the venue of the second session? I know these questions, they are not very difficult, very pretty simple questions to answer, and I would request you, please give your answers in the comment box below. And next up is your question number 7. Which one of the following did not take place during the tenure of Lord Dalhousie? Which of the following did not take place in the tenure of Lord Dalhousie? The options are Second Anglo-Burmese War, option B, setting up the telegraph line from Calcutta to Agra, statement C, railways opened from Bombay to Thane, and statement D, foundation of University of Delhi. To answer this question, first of all, you have to be very clear about the tenure of Lord Dalhousie. The Lord Dalhousie's tenure, it started in 1848 and it lasted till about 1856. Right? So during this time period, many important developments happened in India. Some of these developments were positive in nature, some of them negative in nature. For example, the Second Anglo-Burmese War, yes, it happened during the tenure of Lord Dalhousie, and the Britishers, they were conclusively victorious against the Burmese. Setting up a telegraph line from Calcutta to Agra, one of the first telegraph line, the telegraph was introduced in India with this telegraph line. Yes, it was laid down during the tenure of Lord Dalhousie. Similarly, the first rail that operated in India, the first train service that operated in India, it operated from Bombay to Thane, and it again happened during the tenure of Lord Dalhousie. Right? The foundation of University of Delhi, it happened quite late. It happened in the 20th century, in 1922, I guess. Right, so the correct answer for this is option number D. The University of Delhi, yes, was established in 1922 as a unitary teaching and residential university by an act of the then Central Legislative Assembly of the British Indian government, and Lord Dalhousie functioned as the governor of India from 48 to 56. Right, so be very careful about this, because in this question also the scope of confusion is there, but we can imagine that there is a considerable difference in the time periods of both the events, the tenure of Lord Dalhousie as well as the foundation of University of Delhi. Right, next up, let us talk about the question number 8. Question number 8 is about Anglo-Maratha Wars, the series of wars between the Maratha Confederacy in India and the British power. During the Anglo-Maratha Wars, which one of the following was concluded last? Which of the following was concluded last? Which of the treaties was concluded at the last, the latest treaty which was concluded among these? So options given to us are the Treaty of Gwalior with Scindia, Treaty of Mandsaur with Holkar, Treaty of Pune with Bajirao II, and Treaty of Surji Arjan Gaon with Scindia. Right, so we have to answer the name of the treaty which happened last. Actually, all these treaties, they were part of the second, first and third Anglo-Maratha wars, in which the Britishers, they routed the Maratha powers, and actually Britishers, they played the policy of divide and rule, and they different confederates of Marathas, the Scindias, the Holkars, the Peshwas, all of them, they were divided on certain issues, and Britishers took advantage of this, and they conclusively defeated the Marathas in the Anglo-Maratha wars. The correct answer of this question is not the Treaty of Surji Arjan Gaon, because I have wrongly mentioned the correct answer. The correct answer has to be the treaty which was concluded last. Right, so the correct answer for this question is going to be the Treaty of Mandsaur. The correct answer is option number B, and I apologize for this. The correct answer is option number B, the Treaty of Mandsaur. Actually, I gave you the answer of the treaty which was concluded the earliest. The treaty to be concluded the earliest was Surji Arjan Gaon. It was signed in 1803 between Scindia and the British. The Treaty of Gwalior in 1817 in Second Anglo-Maratha War. The Treaty of Pune again in 1817, while the Treaty of Mandsaur was signed in 1818 between Malhar Rao Holkar and British, in which Peshwa was dethroned, and this was basically the conclusive treaty in which Britishers, they gained an upper hand against the Marathas, and they sent the Peshwa on pensioning and basically removed all the powers which Peshwa had over his territory. Okay, so the correct answer for this question has to be Treaty of Mandsaur with Malhar Rao Holkar. Next up, the second last question of the day. This question is about the Treaty of Srirangapatnam, which was concluded between the Britishers and Tipu Sultan, the ruler of Mysore at that time. Who among the following concluded the Treaty of Srirangapatnam with Tipu Sultan? Options are Lord Hastings, Lord Cornwallis, Lord Wellesley, or Lord Dalhousie. So the correct answer for this question is option B, Lord Cornwallis. And Treaty of Srirangapatnam is a very popular treaty in the Anglo-Carnatic Wars. This was a treaty which basically decided the fate of the South India, and how the Britishers, they gained their paramountcy in South India, and also defeated the French and also defeated the native Indian rulers. So the Treaty of Srirangapatnam, it was signed in 1792. Its signatories included Charles Cornwallis on behalf of the British East India Company, and representatives of the Nizam of Hyderabad and the Maratha Empire, and Tipu Sultan, the ruler of Mysore. Right. Next, friends, let us talk about the last question of the day, and this last question is about again Lord Dalhousie's tenure and basically the causes which led to the 1857 revolt. The two statements are given to us, and we have to identify the correct statements out of these two. The statement number 1 says the Lord Dalhousie's government passed the General Service Enlistment Act, which made the sepoys to serve anywhere as required by the government. So Lord Dalhousie's government, be very careful, Lord Dalhousie's government, I have already told you that Lord Dalhousie was in power till 1856. Okay, his government passed this act named as General Service Enlistment Act, and this act made it compulsory for all the Indian sepoys, all the Indian soldiers in the British Army, to serve anywhere as required by the government. I will give you some context for this statement also, because in that times it was really believed that the upper caste Hindus should not be crossing the seas, should not be leaving the motherland, that is the India, that is the subcontinent. So it was against the religious philosophy or religious beliefs of some communities of India that they do not want to cross the seas. Okay, but during this time the Burmese war were happening, and in British Indian government, it wanted to send a lot of Indian sepoys or Indian soldiers to Burma or to Myanmar and station them there. The only way, the only easy way to reach Myanmar at that time was through the sea. From Bengal, you take a boat and you reach the Myanmar region. But Indian soldiers, they did not want to do that. So the Britishers, they came up with this act that all the British soldiers who are operating, who are serving under the British Army, all the Indian soldiers who are serving under British Army, they have to go anywhere they are ordered to go, be it in Myanmar. If they are ordered to cross the seas, they have to cross the seas. And this was a very important bone of contention, a very important grievance of Indian upper caste communities. They did not want this act to be implemented, but it was implemented, and this led to 1857 revolt. This was one of the major causes behind that. Okay. Second statement says the Post Office Act passed by the government of Lord Canning. Now, Lord Canning is the Viceroy or the Governor General, we can say, who came after Lord Dalhousie. He withdrew the sepoys' privileges of free postage. Sepoys, as we know, they had to be stationed in their bases away from their homes and villages, and therefore a lot of sepoys, in fact all of the sepoys, they used to write letters back home. This was the only way of communication, and on the letters they had to fix a postage, which was kind of a tax you were paying to the government. So all the sepoys, they were exempt from paying taxes, they were exempt from postage. They were given the privilege of free postage, that whatever letter you write, wherever you want to send it to, you need not fix a postage stamp. But this act, the Post Office Act, it removed that privileges, and now all sepoys had to affix postage. They had to give revenue to the government in order to write letters back home. So out of these two statements, only the second statement is completely correct. Lord Canning, he came up with the Post Office Act, and this act removed the postage privileges, and therefore all the British Indian soldiers, they had to affix postage, they had to give extra revenue to the government in order to write letters back home. Okay, the first statement is partially correct. The General Service Enlistment Act, yes, it was passed in order to make Indian soldiers serve anywhere as required by the British government, but it was also done during the Lord Canning's tenure and not Lord Dalhousie's tenure. Therefore the correct answer here is option B. Only the second statement is correct, right? So this is all for today's video, my friends, and I have discussed some important MCQs, 10 questions from the Indian freedom struggle with you. And I would again request you that if you have not seen the previous 12 sessions where we have discussed more than 100 MCQs on the Indian freedom struggle and Indian Union, please go through those sessions as well, and you will be able to revise more than 100 questions, and that will be more than enough in order to be prepared for the ESIC Deputy Director exam. Okay, so this is the point where I bid adieu to all of you. Keep on learning, keep on growing. Jai Hind and Jai Bharat.